Welcome to History Tidbit number 13, Shipwrecks and Relics. I'm Helen Alten, the director of the Haynes Sheldon Museum. Today, we are going to dive into and discuss three famous historic shipwrecks in the Lynn Canal. We will also take a virtual look at shipwreck objects in the museum collection and how we care for them. The soaring mountains and pristine waters of Southeast Alaska mask subtle treachery. Violent storms, icy waters, submerged rocks, and an average 20-foot fluctuation in tides can make for dangerous passage. The start of the Klondike Gold Rush in 1897 dramatically increased ship traffic through Lynn Canal. Due to a paucity of navigational aids and the sailors' unfamiliarity with the area, numerous shipwrecks occurred. Today, we'll discuss three of the more famous shipwrecks: the Clara Nevada, the SS Princess May, and the SS Princess Sophia, which is also known as the Titanic of the North. Okay, perhaps the most spectacular wreck was that of the steamship Clara Nevada. And here she is at port pre-1898. In February of 1898, the Clara Nevada went down adjacent to Eldred Rock under suspicious circumstances. And this is before there was a lighthouse there. As many as 75 lives and 850 pounds of Klondike gold, which is about $16 million worth of gold today, were lost and never found. While the press reported no survivors, only one body was ever recovered from the wreck. Historical records suggest there were survivors. Two men, William Hemming and George Casey, who are thought to have been aboard, returned to Rockport, Indiana, where they lived out the rest of their lives. Captain C.H. Lewis apparently survived and advertised for passengers on another boat 6 months after the Clara Nevada sank. The mystery of the disaster has never been solved. One theory is that the boilers were in poor condition, exploded, and sank the ship. A second theory suggests that the captain and crew were incompetent, which was common during the gold rush. The most popular theory is that someone set 3 little fires in the boiler room and then used dynamite to blow a hole in the ship's side. The 850 pounds of gold have never been recovered. To this day, divers look for it. Divers Jim Nelson and Tim Green retrieved this porthole from the Clara Nevada in 1986 and donated it to the museum. Outrage and national media attention around the wreck of the Clara Nevada generated support in Washington, D.C. In 1900, Congress appointed money to build 12 lighthouses in Alaska. Eldred Rock Lighthouse, about 35 miles south of Haynes, was built in 1905 to prevent more shipwrecks. The lighthouse was manned until 1973 when it became automated. It remains an important navigational feature for vessels in our local waters, and it is the only original lighthouse in Alaska. It's our oldest lighthouse. All the others had been replaced over time. Here's a gallery view of the original Fresnel lens of the Eldred Rock Lighthouse on permanent loan from the Alaska State Museum. A Fresnel lens is a type of composite compact lens originally developed by French physicist Augustin Jean Fresnel at the start of the 19th century for lighthouses. The Fresnel lens reduces the amount of material required compared to a conventional lens by dividing the lens into a set of concentric annular sections. And this shows you, this is a conventional lens. You see how much glass would be used, and a Fresnel lens is much lighter. It doesn't require as much material. It's been called the invention that saved 1 million ships. According to Smithsonian Magazine, the first Fresnel lens was used in 1823. And Fresnel produced 6 sizes of lighthouse lens and divided into 4 orders based on their size and focal length. The next wreck that we'll discuss is the Princess May. And the steamship SS Princess May departed Skagway and was proceeding south down Lynn Canal in heavy fog when it ran aground on the rocks near the north end of Sentinel Island on August 5th, 1910. It was high tide, and the momentum of the ship forced it well up onto the rocks, with the bow jutting upward at an angle of 23 degrees. This produced a number of dramatic photos, including this photo from the museum collection. Photos of the wreck were sold all over the West Coast. Thanks to the close proximity of Sentinel Island, passengers, crew, and valuable cargo were easily evacuated. After blasting rocks, the Princess May was eventually floated free and repaired. This iconic photo of the Princess May is featured in in this week's Color the Collection mini coloring book for kids. So stay tuned for the link at the end of this video. And if you're not familiar with our coloring books, this will be the 4th mini coloring book that we've created, and they are all on our website. The next one that we'll discuss is the Princess Sophia. This was the worst maritime disaster of the Pacific Northwest. On a southbound voyage between Skagway and Vancouver, British Columbia, the SS Princess Sophia struck Vanderbilt Reef in Lynn Canal in a blinding snowstorm during the early morning hours of October 23rd, 1918. And we had a big exhibit about this, and there was also a wonderful play created here in Haines and an opera down in Juneau in 2018 to celebrate the 100th year anniversary of the sinking of the Sophia. The steamer was positioned on the rocks with its entire hull out of the water at high tide. Because the Princess May had refloated, and because premature evacuation of another ship further south had killed all the passengers, the captain of the Princess Sophia decided to keep everyone on board. Heat and light were maintained on the ship, and the 268 passengers and 75 crew members waited for more favorable weather to transfer everyone to rescue crews. And there were a number of ships waiting around the Sophia. There was this was a very modern ship, so there was electronic telegraph transmissions going back and forth between the Sophia and other ships, and the communication was pretty constant until 4 p.m. on October 24th, when the U.S. lighthouse tender Cedar received a radio message from the Sophia that it was taking on water. By that time, there was a thick blizzard with gale force winds in the area, and all efforts to locate the ship were unsuccessful. And many of the rescue ships had to seek shelter because they were in danger as well. The next morning, the Cedar located the ship, and only the mast was visible above water. It was assumed that the Sophia had finally sunk at 7:30 a.m. on the morning of October 25th. All the passengers and crew, 343 people, were lost. Many of them were important officials and community members from Alaska and Canada. And so this is the mast sticking out of the water and the people climbing on the mast afterwards. They were diving, trying to find survivors, trying to find out what was going on. There was actually one survivor of the wreck, and that was a dog belonging to Captain James Alexander of British Columbia. While Alexander and his family perished on the Sophia, their tenacious little dog swam 8 miles from Vanderbilt Reef to Tea Harbor, then walked 4 miles to reach Auk Bay Cannery, where he was discovered. To the best of our knowledge, the dog remained at the cannery for the rest of its life. And this is an article from the Alaska Daily Empire. Our visitors, those of you who visited us 2 years ago, will remember that about the Princess Sophia in the 2018 traveling exhibit, Titanic of the North, which commemorated 100 years since the shipwreck. This is an image from the exhibit with 2 items from our collection. The SS Peterson from Port Chilkoot, Haines, from our fort, was standing by to remove passengers and recorded the catastrophe in the ship's logbook, which we had on exhibit, and this is one of the pieces that came out of the wreck of the Sophia. There's also a little more about the Sophia. In 1976, there was an article written in the Alaska Magazine, and it was "Watery Grave Gives New Life Princess Sophia as Artificial Reef." The Sophia is a jagged white mound on the bottom. Virtually no part has escaped the attachment of the large sea anemone, Metridium senile. The effect is eerie. So here's a sea anemone right there on the wreck. The effect is eerie. Thousands of white anemones slowly and silently extending their tentacles. There's a whole bunch of them on the wreck. The Sophia lies on her side, gradually settling into the bottom, with her bow in about 60 feet of water and her stern at about 100 feet. Hull plates lie twisted and broken. Pieces of her masts and superstructure are strewn about. There are gaping holes in her sides, all testimony to her last violent moments and years of slow decay. And this was written by Nancy Barr, The Princess Sophia Revisited, Alaska Magazine, July 1976. So let's see. We have photographs, but what else do we have about these wrecks? These are some of the objects from our collection. The museum vault contains many drawers of shipwreck artifacts that were retrieved by various divers at different times during the past 100 years. We have some from the Sheldon family. They went on to some of the shipwrecks, as well as people more recently. The material is fragile. It's loaded with salts and covered in accretions. Our treatment and care include removing salts from the artifacts when possible without destroying them, carefully and slowly drying them if that is needed, and preserving them in climate-controlled storage within padded, powder-coated drawers. Polyethylene bags help prevent dust deposition and damage from handling. But most important is the climate control for these materials. Now, the Princess Sophia was called a pocket liner because she offered amenities like a great ocean liner, but on a smaller scale. While not as luxurious as her fleet mates, Princess Sophia was comfortable throughout, particularly in first class. These tiles hint at some of the luxury found within the ship. These 5 interlocking pieces of ceramic tile, shaped like puzzle pieces, were brought up by divers Tim Green and Jim Nelson in early October 1986. They are covered in marine accretions, which are not removed, since they are intrinsic to the history of the ship and its burial in Lynn Canal. Similar tiles are visible from a dive in 2010 in this photograph that shows a man's shoe near puzzle tiles, just like the ones that were brought up in 1986. This ceramic plate shows accretions from being in the marine environment. And how far to clean an artifact depends on the purpose of the museums holding the item. Art museums are more likely to highly clean and remove all damage, all accretions, regardless of what it records of the history of the object. For an art museum, looking pretty is paramount. For a history or archaeology museum, the state of the object is valued along with the object itself. Although accretions obscure surfaces and sometimes surface decorations, and here you can see it's sort of hard to see the logo on this plate, they are important records of what the object endured before arriving at the museum. In general, only damage that will continue to deteriorate the object, such as embedded salts or damage that occurs after it arrives at the museum, are repaired. Now, we were showing you some historic photos, and I wanted to show you as our final object this photograph of a glass plate negative. Early photographs were made using glass plates with an emulsion painted on the glass. These rare images are fragile for 2 reasons. The glass is easy to break, and the emulsion's adherence to the glass will bubble or peel in unregulated environments. And so here's an example of a glass plate negative showing a lifeboat off the SS Edith shipwreck. So We have some terms for people who want to show this to their children and then have a discussion about it. Shipwreck, porthole, mariner, accretion, relic. Clara Nevada is one of our ships. Fresnel lens, and the S isn't spoken because this is actually a French word, a French name, so it's Fresnel. Artificial Reef, Vanderbilt Reef, SS Princess Sophia, and SS Princess May. Thank you so much for listening. We have coloring books under the Associated Educational Materials at sheldonmuseum.org/special-events. And you'll find all of our History Tidbits recordings there, as well as all of the educational materials that are associated with them. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday when Reggie is going to talk about sled dogs and pack animals.